Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast, and I wanted to do a quick episode on home loans or the doctor loan. I know many of you are struggling. I listened to Income Outcomes Show that did a great episode on their name is Waypoint Financial, and Waypoint is when you kind of go off track and then try to come back on track, or at least that's how they explained it. And after graduation, the dust really settles, and you kind of look at your money and where you're at, and it's just like, that sinking feeling in your stomach, like, what have I done? What have I done? And then, you've sacrificed up to a decade if you do it the way that schools tell you to, 4 years bachelor's, 4 years pharmacy, 2 years PGY1, PGY2, and now you are probably about $200,000 in debt. That would be the average, putting undergrad with grad, and then the residency penalties. So each year you're in residency, some of your loans gain interest as well. So you're about $200,000 down, and there's something called a doctor loan or a physician mortgage loan, but there's also the same thing for pharmacists, and they consider other professions within that doctor loan. So I wanted to talk to you about it. I'm not going to tell you there are many places that do it, and I can put you in touch with a lender, and just first of all, I'm not giving you financial advice. I'm just kind of looking at the pros and cons. I had 7 years of experience as a full-time real estate agent. Two, it's a guy that I worked with during that time in the Baltimore area, and he was really helpful in terms of explaining what it is to me, explaining what it is to the clients that I had, and I think that we had about 300 clients over that time period. So I've gone through many sales and many purchases, and if you look at the mortgage loan, zero down with no PMI, it seems like a win-win. So I'm actually going to take the opposite approach, which is to say these are the 5 reasons you shouldn't do it, and then kind of go from there and talk about how you can make it work. Okay? So the first is the taxes. I'm not an accountant, and the first thing you think of with a home is that you're doing it because of tax-deductible interest. But depending on your income, and I don't know, you'll need to meet with an accountant to figure this out, but if you are taking a standard deduction, the new standard deduction, your home mortgage may not be on there, and that's my understanding from the accountant that I've talked to, at certain incomes. So you're going to have to figure out from your income what is your interest rate, and if what is where does it make sense to take the standard deduction, does it not? So again, I'm not an accountant, but understanding that there's a possibility that it doesn't make sense for you to take that itemized deduction, and that's a conversation to have. And you say, well, I don't have an accountant, I'm not rich like that. You can talk to financial planners who can put you in touch with one. I know the YFP team, I'm sure, could do it. The Income Outcomes guy could certainly do it. Guys could do it. So anyone who's a financial planner that you trust, I would definitely ask them for a good referral. Okay. So second, you don't have PMI. And first of all, what is PMI? What is insured is not the actual mortgage, but the 20% or the difference between the 20%. So a bank likes to have 20% down because traditionally the price of the home just won't dip that much. And if that's the case, then they just need to insure whatever is missing from yours. So let's say you put 5% down, then we need to insure that 15% to get us to a nice comfortable 20%, or what the banks want. And so in some way, you're going to have maybe a little bit higher interest rate if you take one of these pharmacist loans, I believe, but you won't have this PMI. And the issue with PMI is that it doesn't really, there's different types of products, and in many ways it doesn't go away. So you can say, oh, well, my house appreciated to where now I have 80% and 20% loan to value, and that's not how PMI goes away. I think you actually have to literally pay it down. And then I think it actually goes to 22%, not 20%. So some things to talk to with the banker about that, or the loan officer about that. But no PMI is generally, it's a good thing that you're not going to have it, but it's going to maybe cost you on the interest rate side. Okay, so the first thing to talk to, and we're going to kind of need to talk to a lot of people, is an accountant to talk to about tax-deductible interest, and then to talk to the lender, really explaining PMIs. And Ed, who I'd worked with for so long, really did a great job of explaining things. Talking about student loans, so if you want to kind of look at your mortgage and look at your student loans, you say, okay, well, I'm going, instead of paying, or saving up for a down payment, I'll just pay some of my student loans. And I don't know if that necessarily is the way that I would have done it. So if I was in the position that most of you guys are, so we're talking about $200,000 in debt or somewhere close to it, and you're just starting out, I would look at it as saying, all right, well, what I really want to make myself feel comfortable is to have a safety net. So I care more about how much I have in the bank to come up with unexpected, surprises. Maybe something happens with the house where, the air conditioner goes out, or we need to replace, something, roof or something like that. It's much more important to have money in the bank than that little bit less that you owe on the student loans. And if you're talking about, so let's give a hypothetical. Let's say you have $20,000 that maybe you saved up, and you could put it down as a down payment or part of the down payment. You could, put it towards your student loans, or you could advance your mortgage. And, which do you do? And that's something you want to talk with a financial planner about. But I would actually take the fourth option, which is I would put it in the bank so that I could have the knowledge that I have money just in case something happens. And in listening to the YFP team, 3 to 6 months tends to be where people are at. I personally prefer to have 2 years worth of salary in the bank. And there are reasons for that. I have another house that I have to make sure that I have enough money to cover the rent if something happens, or if something happens to my house or that house. And then I also went through, as a real estate agent, I was going through the beginnings of the collapse. So I know what it's like to have variable income, and it just makes me all warm and fuzzy. So what I bought with that money is peace of mind. For me, peace of mind comes from 2 years' salary in the bank. I know that many investment professionals would say that that's crazy, that's a waste. But it also, in a future episode, I'll talk about investing a little bit, how I invested. I've had 9 homes in my life, in my time from pharmacy school till now, the 20 years, and I own 2 yet right now. And I'll talk about that as we kind of go along. But that's really having that war chest, and then having an opportunity that you have money for those opportunities. If you're, really check to check, it's really, really an uncomfortable place to be. The zero down payment makes the math really hard. So this is kind of the fourth thing. If you have a zero down payment, it's hard to do the math because you're doing math with zero. So let's say, let me give you the example of what I did with my last home. So my last home, I put 20% down on a $205,000 house. So it was a little more than $40,000, whatever made 20%. And we'll just call it $40,000 for the math. And, after the appraisal was done, after I got it, after it wasn't the appraisal, but it was actually the tax assessor that came and said, this house isn't worth $200,000; it's worth $235,000. So I made about $30,000 on that $40,000 that I put in for a 75% return. In later episodes, I'll talk about this too. I don't do anything that doesn't. I don't want to call myself a sophisticated investor, but I'm only willing to make investments that are going to net me 50, 100, 200% returns. I'm not interested in 6% returns. And these, when they lose, I lose everything. But when they win huge. And right now the wins are certainly outpacing the losses. And I'm pretty smart about it. I mean, an investment in something like putting together a book would be, $10,000. And I'm hoping to net at least 20. And then, investing in myself with coaching with, the real estate business. I invested $5,000 in my first year as a real estate agent in Buffini Coaching. They're out of Carlsbad. And I said, bottom line, I put in $5,000. I want $10,000 back. And I got it. Actually, I got $20,000 back, I think. So, 4x what I put in. Well, but then you lose it, so it's really 3x. But anyway, that's kind of how I think of things. Instead of hoping that 2%, 3%, 6% is going to get me there, I'm doing what my accountant told me to do. And my accountant said, you need kills. You need huge sums of money. And when he says huge, he means like $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 at a time to start paying these off in any reasonable amount. So I know that a lot of you guys are willing to work extra hours, extra shifts, but sometimes those aren't available. And it also takes away from your family. Things like this, you can do real estate investing in your own time rather than having to work another, you're already exhausted, another 2 to 10 or another 8 to 4, whatever it is. But the zero down payment, kind of getting back to it, you have infinite gain and infinite loss. If the market is going up and you're trying to save, it may actually outpace you. So, for example, if a home is $200,000 when you start, and this happened when we came into ours. So if a home is $200,000 when you first go into the market, say I'm going to save that $40,000 for the down payment. By the time you get the down payment, the house may be $300,000. So now your $40,000 isn't 20%. You still need to save another $20,000, and you might be chasing the lights, as it were. Potassium and sodium, as we kind of mess with the electrolytes, they tend to kind of slip away from us. So in a rising market, it sometimes becomes impossible to do. In a falling market, however, you actually get there sooner. So if you're kind of coming in and you're saying, okay, I want to get $40,000 for that $200,000 house, and it goes down to $160,000, then when you get to $32,000, you're there and you've got your 20% down. But the issue with saving that money is that now you need to save that money plus the savings that you need 3 to 6 months. So if you're in an area like, California, where you need to buy an $800,000, $900,000 house to be in a decent neighborhood, you're talking about saving $160,000 or $200,000 plus 3 months income, 6 months income. So you're talking huge numbers, $250,000 to do what you need to do, where this will allow you to get in there. Now, the other thing that we did, and as residents, we had roommates, and I'm, at the time I was in my early 30s, and I've got somebody living in our basement. My wife and I are married. We've got someone living in our basement to help us make ends meet because we knew that we took a hit, and we were still trying to be responsible with our money. And same thing in Baltimore. So you're never too good for a roommate, but a roommate, just that extra income each month makes it really easy, and so often the roommate is just never there. So the fear, of course, is that they're going to get in your way, but I find that it actually is the opposite, where they're just not there a lot, especially somebody young who's out all the time or whatever. And then I understand the idea that if you slowly save for something, that you'll have a better appreciation for the value of that. You saved up for something and then you bought it. And I know the YFP team recommends the 20% down for something like that, and to save up for it. And my thought on that is I have enough experience having sold and bought 300 houses that I would feel comfortable taking a zero down loan. But that wasn't my goal with the second house. The second house is just meant to, I'm just trying to pay it off so that it can pay for the costs associated with my first house, because houses are expensive, and outside of just the mortgage, in terms of the roof and the paint and getting, the deck stained and everything that kind of goes along with it. But those are kind of the 5 things that I would really look at if you're looking at one of these no money down loans. Look to see if where you are financially, if it would be tax deductible. I don't know. Talk about the PMI and how that affects the interest rate. Is a little bit higher interest rate. Again, they're giving you these loans because historically the default rate is so low. I think it's a fraction of 1%. It's like a 0.1 or 0.2%, and that's why they're doing this. So after those 8 to 10 years of school and work, they actually give you something. Watching how it fits into student loans and credit card debt and things like that. Because if there's market appreciation in the market and you miss out, then that could have paid your loans. But if there's market depreciation, you've actually put yourself in a hole. So really trying to better understand where it fits into your life. And then I think the last one I was talking about was just that, it's really easy to get the loan, but it's hard to get out of the house, just like it's easy to hire someone, but not necessarily easy to fire them. So thinking and taking time to do it. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about it. If you do want to, Facebook message me or email me, I'll be happy to tell you, who the lender is that I worked with all those years. He was a great guy and really did a great job of talking to him. I think he can only work in the Maryland area, but anyway, hopefully this is helpful and gives you some hope, as many of you are graduating and you've got maybe families coming and you want to have a house. And my recommendation has always been to not get that first house in a neighborhood that you wouldn't want to rent in, because as you maybe rent it out, that's going to be something that people are looking at. So I will talk to you soon.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.